Mace Windu, one of the greatest Jedi of all time and a leader to the Jedi Council. Count Dooku, one of the greatest Jedi of his time and a traitor to the Jedi Council. But between Yoda's right hand and Yoda's biggest failure, who is the superior combatant? And more importantly, who would come out on top in a fight? As always, I will give arguments for both men, and then at the end of the video, I will give my own personal opinion. Count Dooku was the face of the Separatists, a force greater than even Asajj Ventress and General Grievous. He was an absolute master of his type of lightsaber combat form too, allowing him to control most fights he was in as long as he was the more powerful. Dooku is widely considered the GOAT of lightsaber combat and a complete master of his form to an extent unseen, and his form maximized his use of his skill and lowered his need to use his raw power, which is perfect for a combatant of the age of Dooku who has stamina issues. Tyrannus has a level of skill that outmatches anybody he fights, and that would include Mace Windu, regardless of how good Mace Windu is. But keep in mind Mace Windu's lightsaber combat. That's a handy tool for later in the video. Despite Dooku's age and stamina issues, he has been described as physically being someone half of his age. Also, due to Dooku's lightsaber style and physical prowess, he can minimize the drawback of his stamina issues, which aren't even that great overall. Dooku's stamina has only ever hindered him in battles with other top-tier contenders like Obi-Wan and Anakin, but I would consider Dooku's matchup against them in Revenge of the Sith to be quite impressive, especially considering he took a kick to the face from Anakin, and there's numerous statements calling Anakin the strongest Jedi at this point in time. While I don't think that means Anakin was the greatest combative Jedi, I do think it means he is quite literally, physically, one of, if not the strongest Jedi at this point in time. So Dooku matching him even briefly with his stamina issues and while he was running on fumes as described by the novelization of Revenge of the Sith is absurdly impressive. There's even a novel that briefly implies that Dooku's power outmatches that of Mace Windu. I think Dooku's stamina issues are greatly overestimated as he's able to spar with guys like General Grievous and battle against guys like Anakin. Now on to raw force power. While I think Mace Windu and Dooku might be even in terms of their force ability, I think Dooku weaponizes his force powers much better. As a Sith, he can naturally tap into techniques and abilities that Jedi can't, and he's even skilled at Sith alchemy. So I believe Dooku has the skill and force advantage, so you could argue that wins him the battle. Now on to Mace's scaling. While I do think Dooku has that force advantage, Mace Windu has been shown to have some of the greatest feats of force power in the series. Also, every single category that Dooku has a brief advantage on against Mace, Mace is not that far behind against Dooku. Mace is described as one of the strongest Jedi ever, which is a gigantic statement. Also, Mace's style, Form 7, can directly counter Dooku's style, as Mace's style relies more on power and drawing on emotion. Mace's style has been described to be a great advantage over Sith Lords, and Mace is the undisputed master of it, able to defeat Palpatine, though you can argue the validity of that feat. Mace also has an extreme stamina advantage, as shown by how he did against Palpatine while the other Jedi were almost insta-killed, and Mace has been shown to plow through an entire army of droids by himself and only break a couple sweats. Mace's style directly counters Dooku, and I believe that in a prolonged encounter, Mace would have a sheer advantage due to his stamina. Though you could argue how effective Mace's style would be against the sheer mastery of Dooku's, especially especially considering the advantage of Mace's style is raw power, and I would consider Dooku and Mace even in power, if not giving a slight advantage to Mace. That being said, Mace did defeat Palpatine no matter how hard you try and downplay it. And knowing his advantage against Sith Lords, especially Dooku, in a prolonged encounter, I would give the advantage to Mace. I think these two are even in terms of power and how effective they are as combatants, but if they fought 10 times, I would say that Mace wins 7 of those fights. But what's your stance on the debate? Let me know. Bye!